The alien general stood tall on the raised platform. His armor shimmered gold, and his 4 black eyes scanned the silent crowd of species before him. Cameras hovered around, streaming the moment live across a dozen star systems. He lifted a broken, human helmet high in the air, his voice loud and cruel. This ... is the proof. Humans are not warriors. They are pets. Playthings. Soft little creatures who cry when the fight begins. Laughter echoed around the chamber sharp, mocking, full of pride behind him. Guards dragged in a human soldier, burned, bruised, and unconscious. The alien general turned to the cameras again. This is what their army looks like after. One battle, fragile, bleeding, pathetic, elite. He dropped the helmet. It hit the floor with a sharp crack, but far away from the spotlight, deep under the burned remains of Colony 12. Someone else stirred. She coughed. Blood dripped from her lip. Her name was Lieutenant Mara Chen, and she was still alive. The fall of Colony 12 just 3 days ago. Colony 12 had been a quiet place. Blue skies. Farming fields. Kids riding hoverboards near the school domes. It had been peaceful until the Varnok came. The aliens didn't send a warning. No ships on scanners. No message. No demands. Just fire. Flaming pods fell from the sky. Buildings shattered. People screamed. The Varnok didn't use clean weapons. They used blades, claws, and plasma whips. They came to crush spirits. To humiliate. The colony's defense team barely had time to react. A few fighter jets took off. Some ground units held the central square, but it wasn't enough. Within hours, most of the humans were dead or captured. And somewhere in the chaos, Mara was caught in a building collapse while helping the civilians escape. Now, she lay under rubble, her body bruised, her ribs cracked, one leg barely working. Her radio was dead. No gun, no medkit, just her breath. Her blood, and one thing still strapped to her belt. Her knife, waking in ashes. Mara pushed debris off her chest and sat up, wincing. The air was thick with smoke. Fires burned outside. She could hear alien voices, not English, but the harsh Varnok tongue, clicking and growling. She checked her leg. Not broken, but close. She tied it tight with a strip of torn uniform. Then she looked around. No weapon. No team. Just the dead, and the sound of enemy boots getting closer. She didn't panic. Didn't cry. She reached down and pulled out the knife. It was a simple thing. A 6-inch blade, forged from steel, back on Earth. No plasma edge. No tech. Just cold, sharpened metal. But in her hand, it felt heavier than ever before. Stronger. She looked up at the ruined sky and whispered to herself, "You said we were soft. Let's find out how soft I really am." A silent move. Mara moved carefully through the rubble, using shadows and smoke to hide. Every step hurt, but she kept going. Her training was deep survive, adapt, strike. She remembered it with every breath. She found a dead alien patrol near a transport site. 3 Varnok soldiers. Their weapons had been looted, but one still wore a half-damaged cum unit. She took it, not to call for help. It was scrambled, but to listen. She clipped it on and heard alien voices crackle through. Clear sector. 4. No survivors left. Humans cry too easily. This war is no fun. Just wait until we ship the next group off-world. Her grip on the knife tightened. She limped toward the nearest dome, once a school, now a Varnok supply station. It wasn't heavily guarded. They didn't expect resistance. That was their first mistake. First blood inside the dome. A Varnok soldier stood guard alone. He leaned back against the wall, chewing some glowing meat from a ration pack. He didn't even have his gun ready. Mara crept behind the desk, silent breathing, steady, then dash swift. The knife slid across his throat like lightning. Alien gasped, eyes wide, but no sound came out. He dropped without a thud. She wiped the blade. Clean on his armor, still not a sound, still not seen. The shadows were her friends now, the pet, who fights back at the Varnok base camp. Laughter continued. The alien general was celebrating. Another captured city, another weak species broken. Humans had shown promise at first, but this colony had crushed that idea. He raised a toast in the command tent, surrounded by alien officers. We will cage. The survivors sell the strongest, eat the weakest. Their females cry louder than the males. It's music. Everyone laughed. But just outside the perimeter, a single human cut, dirty, quiet was crawling through the mud. Watching them from behind a torn fence. She didn't smile. She didn't speak. She just marked the location in her mind and whispered, "You don't get to celebrate yet." The whisper of Steel Mara knew she couldn't take on the whole camp? Not yet, but she could make them scared. She began picking off scouts, one by one, always silent, always clean. Sometimes she left the knife wound exposed. Sometimes she left a message. Scratched into armor with the tip of her blade, not soft. Within 48 hours, the Varnak started whispering. They thought it was a ghost, or maybe a secret human weapon. But the truth was far more dangerous. It was one woman with one knife, and she was just getting started. The Varnok Scout Patrol didn't see her. They joked as they walked through the ruined streets of Colony 12. 3 of them, big, armored, carrying rifles. The leader kicked over a human toy on the ground and laughed, still soft, no teeth. "Fight," one said in their alien tongue. But as they turned the corner, the last one in line froze. There was a shadow just for a second. Then something sharp flashed, no sound. Just a slice, the alien collapsed, gurgling blood pouring from his throat. The others spun, guns ready, but it was too late. A blur came from above, slash stab, gone. 2 more bodies hit the ground, all quiet again. Mara stood over them, breathing hard, her knife covered in dark alien blood. "The knife doesn't ask for permission," she whispered. Then she disappeared into the smoke. The fear begins back at the Varnak base. Confusion was growing. Patrols weren't returning. Soldiers were missing. Some were found later with their armor cut open and no signs of a fight. General Varok slammed his clawed hand on the command table. "You said there were no humans left." One of his officers bowed in fear. "There weren't. Until now." Varok growled. "And find her? I want her dragged to me in chains." The base sirens screamed. New orders were sent. Search teams were dispatched. The aliens were no longer laughing. Inside, the dust Mara moved like a ghost. Every alley, every ruined room was part of her map now. She had no drones, no computers, just her memory, her training, and her knife. She had stitched her leg with a med thread she pulled from a broken supply box. It hurt, but she didn't have time to rest. Not when prisoners were still locked up, not when the enemy was getting close to leaving with them. She found an old schoolhouse, half destroyed but empty. Inside was silence, dust, broken glass. A child's drawing still pinned to the wall. She sat there for a moment, remembered the kids, the laughter. Then she stood again, eyes cold. This wasn't her home, but it had become her battleground. The next message that night, another alien patrol went missing. This time the search team found them, 3 Varnok, dead sliced clean and written across the wall in their blood, still soft. The words shook them. These were soldiers trained killers. Not one of them had gotten a shot off. The Varnok. Soldiers began whispering to each other. They gave the ghost a name, the human. Blade. Some claimed she was invisible. Some said her knife was cursed. None of them wanted to go alone anymore. Planning the break, Mara crawled through an old maintenance tunnel, using an old colony map from her memory. She was headed for Sector 9, the prisoner cage area. She had heard the alien radio chatter. Survivors were being grouped there to be shipped. Off-world in 3 days? She had 2 nights to make a move. She didn't have bombs. She didn't have allies, but she had shadows, silence, and steel, and rage. Lots of it. The guardhouse kill bee for hitting Sector 9. She needed a keycard. She waited for hours outside a Varnak outpost where officers played gambling games inside. shouting and drinking. One of them came outside to smoke. That was the mistake. She dropped from above, wrapped her arm around his throat and drove the knife into the side of his neck. Fast, deep, silent. Then she dragged him into the dark, looted the card, and vanished again. Inside, other officers kept laughing. They never saw the blood trail. Aliens losing grip, the alien general now walked with guards on every side. The attack patterns were too smart, too clean. It wasn't just a human rebel. It was a tactician. Varnok paced in front of his soldiers. Humans are nothing alone. They fall apart. They cry. We've seen this. But his voice lacked the same confidence now. Someone in the back whispered, "Then why are we the ones bleeding?" Sector 9 Mara watched from a rooftop. Below her, Sector 9 was surrounded by fences, guards, and searchlights. Inside, cages held nearly 100 human survivors, men, women, even kids. Many looked weak, sick, hopeless. Her heart tightened, but her face stayed cold. She saw the transport ship being prepped. In 2 nights they'd all be gone, sold, tested, enslaved. Or worse, she couldn't let that happen. Tonight, she would strike. But first, she needed one more thing. A distraction. The fire trap. That same night, she planted a timed plasma cell inside a crashed fuel truck near the Varnok barracks. Then she set a trail of glowing paint to a fake human bunker as the aliens investigated. The fake signal. Boom. The explosion lit up the night sky. Fire. Screams. Smoke. Guards ran from their posts. Sector 9 was left with only a handful of soldiers. Perfect. The silent rescue Mara slipped in through a side hatch. 1 guard. Throat slit. 2nd. Guard. Knife to the spine. 3rd tried to scream. She threw a rock, made him turn, and slashed him across the eyes before he could call for help. Then she found the control panel and slammed the override. The cages opened. Humans blinked in shock. Crawling out, looking at her, some in fear, some in awe. She raised a hand. Quiet. Follow me. We're not done yet. Blood stained the steel floor. The camera drone floated above the scene. It recorded 3 dead Varnok soldiers cut clean, armor torn open like paper. A message was scratched into the wall behind them. Glowing in low red light. Still think I'm soft? Inside the Varnok warship, silence fell. Commander stared at the footage. No explosions, no gunshots, just precision. And death. General Vorik's face tightened. This isn't war, he said slowly. This is a message. Another officer leaned forward, voice shaking. We didn't know they had a Reaper. The Reaper's trail. Lieutenant Mara Chen moved like a shadow. Behind her, 37 survivors followed through old underground vents beneath Colony 12. Some were weak, some limped, but all followed her without question. They had seen what she did to the guards. They had heard the stories from others. One boy whispered, "She's the Blade." One who fights alone. Another older man said nothing but held a broken pipe like a weapon now. They weren't soldiers, but they were becoming something else, because one woman, bleeding and quiet, was leading them into hell with only a knife. Panic in the camp. The Varnok soldiers were changing. Gone were the jokes. Gone were the casual walks. Now they marched in groups. Weapons up. Eyes scanning shadows. Something was hunting them, and they had no name for it. Some called it the soft death. Others, the Blade Ghost. But the most common name, whispered in fear, was Reaper. The tunnels burned. Mara led the survivors to an old tunnel exit, but it was blocked. Flames from the earlier explosion had caught. Underground, the heat was rising. One of the women screamed as her foot slipped and fell into fire. Mara jumped in, pulled her out, tore her sleeve, and wrapped the burn in seconds. "No time to cry," she said. "You cry later, you live now." But behind them, shouts. Alien voices. They were coming. The first stand. They reached an old sewer gate, rusted, heavy. but it opened as the survivors crawled out into a dark warehouse. Mara turned. She didn't follow them. "You go," she said. "I'm not done." One of the older men stepped forward. "We can help." Mara shook her head. "You want to help? Get the kids to safety? That's your mission." Then she pulled her knife tighter in her hand and disappeared into the tunnel darkness again. Fear changes them outside. The alien search party arrived. They saw nothing until a body fell from above. It hit the ground with a wet thud. They spun, confused. Then one was dragged into the smoke. One Varnok screamed, "She's here!" Blasters fired in every direction. Lights flashed, but the air was thick with heat, smoke, and something worse, fear. When the smoke cleared, 5 soldiers were gone, and scratched on a beam. "You said we were pets." The Varnok crumbled. General Varnok now barked orders louder, angrier. Troops were ordered to burn all hiding places. Drones were launched. Even war beasts were released to track her scent, but nothing worked. She was always one step ahead, every dead. Varnok told a new story. Every bloodstain spread her legend, and worst of all, every escape made humans bolder. Some of the rescued survivors were now setting traps themselves, sharpened pipes, firebombs, decoys. The colony wasn't dead, it was waking up. The knife finds armor during a supply raid. Mara ambushed a Varnok elite guard convoy. It was risky, but she needed more than a knife now. She struck fast, took down one, stole his reinforced armor, stripped the arm blades now. She wasn't just fast, she was armored. She was sharper, and she was angry. With the enemy's own tech strapped to her body, she became something else. Not just a soldier, not just a survivor. She became war. The general speaks again. Varnok stood before his troops, trying to hold order. "She's alone," he shouted. "One human. You're 100. But none met his eyes. They had seen the footage. They had seen the scars. And deep down, they knew. One human was enough. The alien soldier screamed, but only once. The sound echoed through the broken corridors of the colony. Power station. When the others arrived, all they found was blood on the floor, a shredded comm unit, and a wall. Words had been carved deep into the steel wall using something sharp, almost surgical. "You made me this way." They looked around in fear. Footsteps in the shadows. The lights flickered once, then went out. She is not hiding anymore. Mara no longer crept only to survive. Now, she moved with purpose. With design, she knew the aliens were watching. She knew their drones scanned the buildings. Their troops now came in groups of 10 instead of 3. That was fine, let them come, because she had learned every weak point, every blind spot, every dark corner in the ruins of Colony 12 was now a trap waiting to be sprung. Messages in bloodied. One warehouse, alien patrols found their comrades strung upside down. No blaster wounds, no signs of a gunfight, just clean cuts. Across the walls, written with alien blood, "You said we had no teeth." In a former food depot, 2 guards were found stabbed in the chest. Slumped against a crate, etched into the floor below their feet. Still laughing? Even the elite troops stopped speaking when they moved. They didn't dare talk, because they knew. She was listening. The survivors began to rise, not far from the chaos. The survivors Mara had rescued began building safe zones underground using old shelters, tunnels, and hidden spaces. They weren't soldiers, but something inside them was changing in. Old engineer crafted a flame trap from kitchen gas lines. A teenager used wire from wreckage to make trip alarms. Even children helped placing marks on walls to signal danger. One woman, Sarah, started drawing what they called blade signs. Simple. Human symbols scratched into walls with broken glass. A warning, a call, where those signs appeared. Varnok patrols started dying. The knife finds a voice. Mara knew she couldn't win the war alone, but she could win something bigger. She found an old relay station, half destroyed but still alive. Under the floor, using stolen power cells, she hacked the alien comm system. Her message went live. Only 12 seconds long, her face appeared on screens across the colony. Bloodied, dirty. her eyes sharp, and in her hands still the knife. You call us pets, but now your hunters are bleeding. You called us soft. Now you hide. I am just one. Imagine what happens when we all stand. She cut the feed. Let them sit with that. The Varnok tried to strike back. The alien general Varnok was furious. He launched a counter-operation. 20 armored elites, heat scanners, attack beasts, flamethrowers. They cornered her in the factory ruins. Finally, they surrounded the building. We have you, the alien squad leader shouted. Come out, die quickly. But she didn't run. She waited, and when the first Varnok entered, the floor exploded beneath him. A trap, an old mining charge. Smoke filled the air, screams followed. Then came the blade, fast, unseen, unstoppable. 10 minutes later, factory was burning, the elite squad was gone, and Mara walked away. One ping. But alive, the first crack in the Empire elsewhere. In orbit above the planet, Varnok commanders listened to the recordings. They watched the chaos. They had sent hundreds of soldiers to take one colony. One human woman had undone all of it. Other colonies might see this. Other humans might learn from it. And the Varnok hated one thing more than defeat. Inspiration she carves for the galaxy now. Mara left more than just blood. She left marks not just for the Varnok but for anyone watching. We don't die quiet. You should have left us alone. You called us prey, then met the wrong hunter. These messages began spreading. The captured comms system leaked them to nearby colonies. Even neutral species began whispering about Colony 12. Have you heard of the Knife Woman? The one who kills in silence? The Reaper of the Varnok? A storm is coming, the Varnok command ordered full retreat from several sectors, not because of human forces, but because of one rumor, that Mara wasn't alone anymore. Some said more. Human soldiers had arrived. Others said she had awakened an old AI system deep under the colony. None of it was true, but none of it had to be, because fear had already done the damage. The alien transport ship began to hum. Its engines glowed red inside the holding bay. Over 90 human prisoners waited, some sitting, some chained, some silently crying above them. Alien guards laughed. One pointed at a crying woman and said, "This one won't last long in the mines." Another grinned, raising his weapon. Humans are weak. They break easy. Then the lights flickered. The engine hum slowed. Suddenly an alarm screamed through the hangar. Warning. Power core failure. External breach in dock sector B. The guards turned to the screen. A camera feed came online. And there she was, Mara, Chen, standing at the loading bay doors. Alone. Covered in armor pieces. Plasma blade in one hand, her steel knife in the other. She didn't say a word. She just started. Walking forward, the final plan before dawn, Mara had studied the stolen Varnok map carefully. She knew the transport hangar was the key. If that ship left, hundreds of humans would be gone forever, sold, tested, or worse. She couldn't let that happen, so she broke into the energy relays beneath the hangar. She planted charges, rerouted power, and waited until the alien crew began loading prisoners. Now, as alarms blared and Varnok shouted orders, she stepped out of the shadows, ready to fight, not to escape, but to end this. The knife meets fire. The first wave of guards rushed her. 3 soldiers, fully armored, blasters up. Mara sprinted at them, sliding under their fire, flipping her knife into a reverse grip. She stabbed the first in the thigh deep. He dropped, screaming. The second fired, but she kicked his arm up, spun, and slashed across his helmet. Sparks flew. The third raised his blade. Too slow. Mara ducked, drove her plasma knife into his chest, and kicked him back. The hallway smelled of burnt metal and blood, and she wasn't done. Inside the ship back in the transport bay, the human prisoners heard the alarms. The guards began shouting in Varnok language. Some left their posts to go fight. Others stayed to watch the screens. Nervously then, one by one, screens went dark. "She's coming here," one guard whispered. Another said no one gets past the hangar core. But even they didn't believe it. The fear in their eyes said something else. They knew she would. The path of a storm Mara kept. Moving every step was pain. Her body was worn down. Her ribs were cracked, her vision blurred at the edges, but she kept going. With every corridor, more Varnok fell. Some she killed in silence, others she took head-on. When a wall of gunfire came at her, she rolled behind cover, pulled out a stolen grenade, threw it without looking. Boom! Screams followed. The hallway floor was littered with alien bodies, and in the smoke, she walked through like a shadow. The hangar door she reached the massive bay doors at last. Inside, dozens of aliens. The last line, the captain of the transport ship shouted, "Stop. Drop your weapon, human." Mara didn't speak. She lifted her stolen plasma blade and cut the door lock open. The doors exploded inward, and she walked in, eyes sharp, jaw tight. I didn't come to surrender. Final fight, they opened fire. Mara dived to the side, rolled it, and threw a blade into the first soldier's neck. She grabbed a fallen rifle, fired twice, then slammed it into another alien's face. Close combat. Again, just how she liked it. She moved like a stormlow, fast and brutal. Knives sliced, armor cracked, screams echoed. A guard tried to sneak up behind her. She turned, blocked his blade, and cut through his leg in one swing. One by one. They fell, and when the last alien collapsed, bleeding and afraid, Mara stepped over him. The prisoners stared in silence. She walked toward them, covered in blood, pulled a guard's hand scanner, unlocked every cage. The prisoners writhed. The humans stood slowly, blinking in disbelief. "Is it really you?" someone asked. Mara nodded once. A child ran forward and hugged her leg. An old woman cried. Then the others began to move, gather weapons from fallen guards. Free others, help the wounded. Mara looked at them all and said, "You're not just prisoners anymore. You're fighters now." And they believed her. The sky begins to burn. As the survivors escape the ship, Mara turned toward the hangar tower. She climbed to the top. From there, she saw the alien base below. Ships were taking off, some fleeing, some calling for help, but she had one last job. She picked up the stolen alien transmitter. "To all Varnok ships in orbit," she said, her voice calm and sharp. "You started this thinking we were weak. Soft, easy to break. Now look at your dead. I'm just one human. One blade. You should pray we never send more." She tossed the transmitter into the fuel tank and walked away. Boom. Flames lit the sky. The alien dropship hovered above the ruins. Its engines hissed like steam from a boiling kettle. The bottom doors opened slowly. 6 massive creatures stepped out, taller than humans. Muscles like armor, claws glowing with plasma heat. Their jaws split sideways. Their eyes were dead. No fear, no hesitation. The Varnok general watched from a distant command screen and smiled coldly. "The humans have knives. Let's see how long they last against Fangborns." Turned to his officers. "Find the one they call Mara. Bring me her head." The shock troops arrived. The Fangborns were not normal soldiers. They were bred for war. Programmed to hunt, tear, kill. They didn't speak. They didn't sleep. They didn't stop. The Varnok only used them when control slipped. Now, with hundreds of their troops dead, one ship destroyed, and survivors fighting back, they had no choice. They gave one order: kill the blade. The warning signs. Mara stood with a group of survivors in the old transit hub, handing out stolen weapons. She had cleaned her blade. Her armor was patched but cracked. Her eyes were sharp as ever. Suddenly, her comlink crackled, hacked from the Varnok's open channels. One word repeated: Fangborn, ... Mara froze. She knew the name. She had read the reports. Fangborn could tear through 5 trained soldiers. They moved like beasts, but thought like hunters. Now, there were 6, coming straight for her, preparing the trap. Mara didn't panic. She nodded to the survivors. "We don't run. We fight smart." She led a small team through broken tunnels and blocked corridors. setting traps from salvaged wires and fuel cells. Narrow hallways were rigged with pressure charges. Ceiling beams were weakened, a ready-to-fall fire. Chambers were built using gas pipes. The goal wasn't to win. The goal was to bleed them, slow them, break their rhythm. The first encounter, the ground shook. A long hallway echoed with clawed footsteps. Mara waited in the dark, lone knife in one hand, a pipe bomb in the other. A Fangborn stepped into view, massive armor-coated steam rising. From its shoulders, it sniffed the air. It saw her and charged. Mara didn't move until the last second. She dodged left, tossed the bomb, and rolled behind a broken wall. Boom. Flames filled the hallway, but when the smoke cleared, the Fangborn stepped out, burned but alive. Mara's eyes narrowed. So, you really are tough. The blade meets the beast they fought in close quarters. The Fangborn swung its claws, tearing through the wall. Mara ducked, rolled, and slashed across its side. The steel knife barely cut the thick hide, but it drew blood. Dark, hot, burning. She kept moving, slice, step, stab. Her plasma knife burned into its leg. The creature roared. It slammed her into a pillar? Mara gasped. Ribs cracking, but she held on. She shoved the steel blade straight into its throat. The Fangborn twitched, then dropped. Mara fell to one knee, coughing blood. One down. The survivors hold the line elsewhere. The other Fangborns pushed into the tunnels. But Mara's traps worked. One triggered a ceiling. Collapse crushing its chest. Another stepped into a flame trap and howled as fire consumed its. Body survivors shot from the shadows, hitting weak points. They weren't just scared civilians anymore. They were a unit. They were fighting back because Mara had taught them something important. You don't need to be strong. You just need to be angry and clever. The final two Fangborns made it to the central hub. Mara was waiting. She was limping now, bloody, her armor dented, her left eye nearly swollen shut. But she was still standing, and her blade still sharp. The creatures attacked together. She fought like a storm ducking between them, using their size against them. One slipped on oil she'd poured earlier, giving her just enough. Time to plunge the knife into its eye. It fell with a heavy crash. The last one grabbed her by the throat and lifted her into the air. Her legs kicked, her vision darkened. Then boom. Sarah, one of the survivors, fired a blaster into the beast's back. It roared and dropped Mara. She coughed, gasped, and drove her knife straight. Into its chest, it staggered, then dropped. The room was silent. Mara dropped to her knees, bloodied, exhausted but alive. Victory and a warning the survivors gathered around her. Some cried, some shouted in victory, but Mara didn't smile. She stood slowly and looked at the nearest drone camera that was still flying overhead. She raised her blade. You sent your monsters? I'm still here. Now it's our turn. The signal reached Jupiter Station 9 in less than 3 minutes. It was short, distorted, but clear enough to freeze every officer in the room. A blood-covered human woman stared into the camera. Her voice was low, steady, calm. This is Colony 12. Varnok forces invaded. We held. We fought. One still stands. Her name is Mara Chen, and she's not done. The feed cut off. Silence filled the control center. One officer whispered, "Is that a distress call or a war cry?" The signal spreads. The recording didn't stay hidden. Someone leaked it to the outer colonies. Someone else forwarded it to the resistance networks. Soon, it was everywhere. Screens, ships, underground bunkers. People paused, mid-meal, mid-flight. They stared at the image of a human woman. Standing alone in a burning hangar, her knife raised, alien bodies behind her. One still stands. The words echoed, and then something changed. The blade wasn't just a weapon anymore in mining colony, Tarsus 3. A worker took his old combat knife from a dusty box and sharpened it, on a cargo ship in neutral space. A pilot with scars on his arms whispered Mara Chen and loaded his old blaster. In a prison moon outside Andro's belt, a human prisoner scratched her name into the wall. Mara had become a signal, not just for war, but for hope. Back on the ground inside the ruined colony hub, Mara rested against a cracked wall, breathing hard. Her wounds were deep, her body ached, but her eyes were alert. Sarah and the other survivors worked around her ceiling doors, reinforcing shelters, tending to the injured. They didn't need orders anymore. They moved with purpose, because now they believed. "They're watching us," Sarah said, pointing to a drone camera floating above. "Good," Mara replied. "Let them see what happens next." The Varnok reacted aboard the lead Varnok battleship. General Varnok smashed his claws into a holodable. "Destroy the colony," he roared. "Burn every tunnel. No prisoners." An officer spoke softly. "If we do that, we prove her message right." Varnok turned, fuming, but it was too late. Varnok troops across other colonies were now hesitating, because fear travels faster than orders. And Mara's name had reached them. The survivors prepare in the colony's deepest sector. Mara opened a sealed vault. Inside were old Earth weapons, long-range missiles, railguns, prototype defense systems. Untouched, she smiled. They thought we'd forgotten how to fight. With help from a few engineers, she began repairing the launch systems. The survivors carried ammo kits, drew maps of safe zones. Everyone had a task. One survivor said, "We were prey. Now we're planning attacks." First response from Earth orbit above Neptune. The human defense frigate Resolute received the signal from Colony 12. The captain frowned. "One survivor?" "No, sir," said the comms officer. "A fighter. And she's inspiring more." They reviewed the data. Dozens of minor colonies had started sending back messages. "Colony 12 is not lost. The blade fights back. We are Mara." The captain stood straight. "Set a course. Tell Earth High Command we're going in." The blade and the beacon Mara stood on the tallest structure left in Colony 12. The old comms tower smoke rose behind her, stars above her. She adjusted the booster array, connected it to her arm-mounted transmitter, and pressed send across systems. A simple signal blinked to life. "We live. We fight. We wait. Pause. Then." That was all. The symbol of a knife. The symbol of resistance. The sky above Colony 12 burned red. The largest Varnok warship ever deployed to a human world hovered overhead, engines roaring, lights blinking like the eyes of a god. On every screen across the galaxy, a live broadcast began. The Varnok wanted everyone to see in the center of the colony, in chains, bloodied and beaten, stood Mara Chen, her knife gone, her armor shattered. General Varnok stepped forward and growled into the camera. "This is what happens to rebels. This is what happens to pets that bite their masters." He looked at her and raised his blade. "Any last words, human?" Mara lifted her broken face. Her voice, cracked but clear, echoed through the Varnok. Ship's audio system manned through every hidden speaker across human space. "You made one mistake." She smiled through blood. He did it live. The final strike, as Varnok raised his sword. Something changed in the sky. A flash, then another, then dash boom. 3 Varnok escort ships exploded in orbit. The live stream shook. Static cutting through the screen, on the edge of the system, 5 Earth. Warships dropped out of FTL. The Resolute led the charge. "Target confirmed," the captain said. "Bring Mara home." The ground uprising inside the colony. Varnok troops shouted in confusion. Sirens screamed. Human survivors hidden in tunnels erupted from the ground, armed with stolen rifles. Makeshift bombs, knives and hope they attacked from all sides. Sarah led the charge through the rubble, shouting for Mara. The Varnok soldiers, once confident, now panicked. They weren't facing a single human anymore. They were facing hundreds. Mara's. Escape as Vorak's blade swung toward Herklang. A shot rang out. Vorak staggered backward, shoulders smoking. Mara looked up. One of the survivors, an old man with one. I had taken the shot from a rooftop. She didn't waste the moment. She reached toward a fallen guard. grabbed a blade with her chained hands and cut herself free. She swung the knife upward straight into Vorik's side. The alien roared and fell. The moment the galaxy changed, the live feed, though damaged, kept running. Billions across the stars watched a human woman bloodied, shaking, barely alive, stand over the Varnok general. She lifted her knife again, weak but determined. And behind her, the Earth fleet arrived in full force missiles. Beams, orbital strikes, for the first time in history. A Varnok capital ship retreated from a human colony, and the galaxy watched it happen. The price of defiance. Mara collapsed soon after the strike. She was carried back into the colony by 2 survivors. Her breathing, heard her words slurred. Did they see? Sarah knelt beside her and smiled through tears. Yes, Mara, they saw everything. Mara nodded once, then her eyes closed. Aftermath, one became many, Mara. Chen's heart stopped that night. Doctors tried, but her wounds were too deep. She died quietly, surrounded by the people she had saved. But her story did not die. The blade becomes a bannery statue, now stands where she fell, carved in silver and steel. Her knife raised, her face calm, across human colonies. The symbol of the blade became a signal. Resistance groups formed. Varnok occupation crumbled planet by planet. The phrase, "We are Mara," was painted across walls, scratched into armor, whispered before battle. The humans had been underestimated, but now they were the storm.